Do you need to reinvent your business? Many of us have been forced to adjust or change the way we work because of all the chaos outside. And even though change is difficult for everybody, it's even harder for those of us with a highly sensitive nervous system. So, how can we navigate a business reinvention in a peaceful way? Well, that's exactly what my guest today is going to share with us. So 10 seconds and we'll get started. Stay tuned. Hey, this is Carol and you're listening to Thriving After Life Storms. Well, as I said at the beginning, I asked you, do you need to reinvent your business? But honestly, it would be more appropriate to ask, who doesn't, right? Because with everything that's going on, every one of us is going through some kind of change, especially in business. And our guest today is going to give us lots of tips and tools on how to navigate change more gracefully. So welcome, Nati. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Chalo. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Well, before we get into the conversation, I typically jump into the conversation. I'm so eager to discuss topics that I forget to introduce my guests. So please let me read your bio so everybody can get a sense of who you are, okay?
Of course.
So Nati is a nonviolent communication certified trainer and coach with over a decade of experience. She helps leaders and entrepreneurs become more resilient and work in a way that is more aligned to the people they are and to their values through more empathic communication. When the way they hold themselves and others changes, they start living in the now their vision of a better future. She's studying a master's in neuroscience and helps people raise their social and emotional intelligence. Nati is also a Montessori teacher and holds a master's in Montessori learning and leadership. So it's a pleasure, so much pleasure to have you with me here, Nati, today. Thank you so much, as I said.
Yeah, it's a very important topic, I think.
Yeah, I want to introduce a little bit, kind of setting the table so we all know what it is we're talking about today. And it's about change. Just look around yourself. Everything's changing. There is so much disruption affecting all of us. I truly think historians will study these times in the future, trying to understand the before and after. For example, I have here a few of the changes that are affecting us a lot. Privacy policies disrupting completely how we've been promoting our businesses on social media. Well, people can't attend live events as they used to because of all those travel restrictions. And then because of that, we are all spending so much more time online these days. And all those things are affecting how we deliver our services or what people are expecting from us that weren't before. And something else that is more internal than external, but it's also a cost for these weird times we're in. And it's lots of people are really looking to have a more meaningful experience, more meaningful work, and even for entrepreneurs. Lots of people are rethinking their offers, coming up with new services completely because they want to be more aligned with their values and to do something that's more meaningful. So it's been a huge wake-up call for all of us. Don't you agree, Nati?
Yeah, and I think a great opportunity, as you say, to align our work towards it being more meaningful and to have serve a greater purpose.
True, so true. It's always the crisis opportunity combo. So true.
Yeah.
Well, let's begin with that idea. Why would you say that change is so difficult? Because, well, it's difficult for everybody, but for us, those people who have a highly sensitive nervous system, it's even harder. So why do you think it's so hard to change?
Yeah, I think to begin with, I think the premise that we have socially is a little bit flawed. If you look at life, as you were saying, it's always in constant flux. Change is the nature of life and of complex systems we live in. even our personal life goes through changes all the time. And I think if we accepted that societally, we'd come from a different place. So I think there's already a disconnect from our expectation of things being stable and how much stability supports us, because it provides safety, for example, and a sense of predictability as well. All those needs are really important at a human level to keep us stable, especially the more sensitive we are internally, the more we feel our emotions and the disruption. We go into a chaos each time. Our brain goes into chaos. Maybe I can tell you a little bit about the brain. I think.
Yeah. I would love to know more about how the brain is connected to how it lives change and how it is effective.
Yeah. So any change requires change in brain circuitry, in neural structure, in how neurons are connecting with each other, talking to each other, and how effectively they do that. So there's some pathways that are already there, very well trodden and very well established. And external change will require that we change those internally as well. And that takes time and it takes practice. So through that process of change, there's a lot of loss of confidence, for example. We don't know what's going on. We're confused. We may even have gone into chaos because we don't understand what's happening from our old reality, right? Because you see, the brain works by prediction. This is a very new neuroscientific theory that is not all that well known. And we don't perceive the world as it is. We make up the world based on our predictions of it. Of course, those predictions can only happen based on our past history and our past systems in our thoughts, right? So when there's big change outside of us, it shakes all of that. And our predictions are no longer accurate to what's happening. So there's a bit of chaos. Literally, there's a lot of chaos until we're able to create those new neural networks, make new predictions, and make sense of the new situation. And that takes time and it takes experience. There's no way to avoid that. I think.
So if I may stop you for a second. When you're saying that there is chaos, you're referring to internal chaos in our nervous system.
Yeah, and sometimes there is external chaos as well, correct?
Yeah. That was the basis of, okay, there's external chaos. But what you're referring now, it's that there is some chaos in our neurological circuitry, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a disparity, you see, because the brain makes a prediction. It makes many predictions for any circumstance, and it picks the one that it thinks is best, more accurately describes what's going on. But if everything's changed, it's not making very accurate predictions. So, right, the way we're understanding the world is not yet accurate. It's not yet supporting us. And that's when we get a sense of chaos and instability inside, confusion, until we're able to make new meaning of what's happening. And the bigger the change, the longer it takes for that process. Yeah, because you literally need new experiences. And mistakes are really great at that because they correct the predictions so that you can actually predict better the next time. Yeah, we hate making mistakes, right? But they're actually really, yeah. And you know,
sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
Not at all. There's something else that happens, which is we have a version of ourselves. We actually have many versions of ourselves going back that we seem to keep track of in our brain. Again, very new research showing that we need to create a new version going forward. We also have predictions of ourselves going forward. And when there's change, all of that shifts. So we need to readjust internally in a very physical way. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we'll go a little bit deeper into that new version of ourselves. I want to ask you something about that. Yeah. So that external chaos leaves us clueless. We don't know how the future could be, and the brain doesn't have any more reference points, so to speak, to make an educated guess that it's more accurate than not, right? That's basically what's going on in a summary, very quick and, with not so well chosen words as you did before.
Chad, you're very sensitive. You're going to feel a lot of instability, lack of predictability, even a sense of not being safe fully at a very subconscious level. And if you're a sensitive person, that can be very almost destabilizing and very it's a big burden to go through, I think, until so you can reorient yourself. You feel hopeless and need to somehow imagine a new, better future before you can feel that sense of safety and hope again. And
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
so learning to deal with our inner emotions is really important. It's a really big piece of how the brain makes predictions as well. Emotions are really important for the
Yeah,
brain.
okay, we will talk more about that also, because I want you to leave us with some practical, really tangible things that we can get started to apply. But this leads me to something interesting that we mentioned when we were preparing the interview back and forth via email. And you said something that really shocked me, that we don't experience change exactly the same. Like change is not like change. There are many different kinds of change, and it's not the same if you willingly decided to change something or the circumstances forced you to deal with change. Could you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Of course, if you have been the agent of creating the change, there's literally, we call it agency, right? You have the driving force behind you that allows you to face even a hard path. But when a situation is forced upon you and you're not necessarily willing initially to face it, you need to gain that willingness first. And who is willing to accept a very hard situation that could potentially be harming them, right? It's really difficult to do. And first we need to accept that what's happening is happening, and that is already a big step. And then we need to again make sense of the world, and then we need to gather the willingness to move forward in a new way. But you weren't planning on changing yourself, you see, and now you're forced to change yourself, and that requires energy and resourcefulness. And we may or may not have it at the time, so we may actually need to resource ourselves internally before we can be willing to face the change and kind of embrace the change. So we fight it a bit at times. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's kind of you're forced to make a trip and you were not planning on embarking on, and yeah, now you need to start packing everything and you were not planning, and maybe you don't have the time, the inner resources, or the motivation to even get started, but you're forced to do it. So yeah, with that metaphor, I think it's really, really clear. Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, Nati. I'm curious, why did you get started with neuroscience? Because I met you when you were teaching nonviolent communication, and I attended a couple of your courses, I think. And now, why? I'm really curious. It's just curiosity.
Well, it's been a long story for me. I have been trained as a scientist. I studied physics for my undergraduate, and I studied neuroscience at the time. I was preparing to become a doctor, which ended up not happening. I have had children, and life became a bit complicated, moved countries. But then studying education, actually getting my master's in education and leadership, that's when we studied neuroscience again, and just my passion for it resurfaced, especially because the whole time that I was working with children, with adults, teaching nonviolent communication, I was a Montessori teacher. Every time I found myself thinking, what's going on behind the hood, right? Beneath the hood, and in our brain, what's motivating social behaviors, what creates change, what impedes change. Of course, my business is about helping people change in the most effective way possible, and the most sustainable way possible. So that I really became curious about what is happening and how can we support people more by understanding what's happening, how our brain functions.
Didn't know that about you, that your path began as your intention of becoming a doctor. Wow, interesting. So, do you mind if we go a little bit deeper into your story?
Of course.
Do you have a personal history, a story of reinvention, especially if it's business related? We don't need to get any more, personal than that, but something business related that you really reinvented yourself. Could you share with us?
Yeah, I think I have a couple, and I'll choose one because it goes really well with what you're talking about in terms of big changes and change being forced upon you. And I was part of a board of directors once at an organization that was doing beautiful social work. And I happened to come across something difficult to hear by the other members in the board of directors. Long story short, I ended up in a general meeting, 60 people, where public humiliation started. And I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. Being a sensitive person myself, I was completely frozen, but so were everybody else. Lies being said about me. Nobody was, it was just like being, hail storm falling on me, being stoned or something. It was really the most aggressive thing I've ever experienced. And funny enough, that night, so that I had already resigned to that position, but funny enough, that night I had a chance to go to England. I was in Spain at the time. And within a week, I had moved my family to England. That's how traumatized I was by this situation. So I had huge change, loss of job, complete new country. And I needed to reinvent myself. And I thought, it cannot be that we treated ourselves like that. I was already an NVC trainer, and realizing that how skilled we need to make ourselves to face challenges, because sometimes the challenges exceed the inner resource tools that we have. So I worked really hard. That's where I went back to school, studying the master's in leadership and education. And eventually I found myself in a very similar situation where, again, a very large meeting, 65 people, and this man just aggressively trying to undermine everything I was doing. And I managed to stay grounded, to see what was happening, to translate what he was saying into more compassionate messages. And everybody around me still frozen, but I wasn't frozen, right? I was leading that workshop. It was a workshop, and I could bring us to the final purpose that we had. We had a goal to achieve, and we did achieve it. And I held the group, I held him, I held me, and it was compassionate. And I thought, that's living by my values. I managed to resource myself so I could withstand such high conflict and difficult situation and change in the moment, right? And I saw the benefit of increasing our ability to be aware of ourselves internally and to manage our emotions. I was still as sensitive. There was still things happening inside me, but I could in the moment realize what they were and shift them. And it allowed me to hold myself with compassion, as well as this person, as well as the whole group. So I don't know if that gives you an idea for how I reinvented myself.
Yeah, completely.
I think that having that purpose-driven reinvention. So it was important to me. I could have closed up from the first experience and just changed careers, but I thought, no, this work is so important to me, and I see the benefit of it, and I see the drawback when people don't know how to talk to each other non-violently. It's really harmful. So it just made me, in this case, it directed me towards neuroscience, towards learning about leadership. How can we resource ourselves so we can really lead the change we want to see in the world? Yeah.
Right. And how things would be so much better if more people were willing to lead a meeting or their own even personal conversations in a more compassionate way. And I'm open. Yeah, I could feel in my heart when you were describing your first situation. I was like, oh, and then I could feel my heart opening when you were describing how you handled the second meeting. I could really feel it.
And the second one was like a gentle rain. It was still raining, still uncomfortable, and it's exactly that ability that you just described, which I think sensitive people have a benefit, because they so more readily have access to that. You can feel yourself expanding or contracting. It takes many people a lot of work, but I think sensitive people have access to that. And for me, it was a process of just turning that around so I could have a little bit more control of it. It wasn't so crazy, right? Or free. It still is very free, very spontaneous, but it gives me control, the ability to manage it better.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And it wouldn't be fair for me to ask you to do something if I'm not willing to do it myself. So I'm going to share just a short story of my own reinventions, because I've had many. But this is connected to one of the questions I want to ask you, something that you mentioned at the beginning. And it's when I stopped working as an architect. I did change careers completely. I wasn't as wise as you were. I completely changed. I stopped doing that. I was so burnt out. and I was on the brink of depression and really didn't know what to do. And just out of the brain, like, okay, I'll just do something for fun. And I started doing, now that nobody's listening, I started doing numerology readings.
Oh, I see.
And it was just, something fun. I wasn't a coach back then, and it was my first step into the personal growth arena that I had always been interested in. So it was more connected to my calling. But then it started to take off, and I was surprised. But there was something important, and I sabotaged that business because I was so afraid that the people who knew me from my prior career and my family would find out I was doing something so woo as numerology, when my identity was that of an architect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we were forced to change, and in that case, it wasn't forced. Like, I willingly started doing numerology readings, and it was so much fun, and it was it was really my opening into the personal growth and psychology stuff and coaching and all that. But I wasn't willing to let anybody think negatively about me. And now you're a woo-woo person, and what has happened to you? Have you lost your mind? All that kind of criticism. I was really afraid. And it was a change of identity. I realized that later, years later. So can you tell us a little bit more? How can we handle a change when it's rooted in something so, excuse me, it even affects my throat to talk about it, as you can feel. When it's something so connected to the root of our beings or our persona, the mask that we put forth outwards. But it's really scary. I still can feel it in my body.
Yeah, I can imagine something like that would be really scary.
Yeah, it was.
Drastic change, and maybe going into something that's not even accepted socially in most circles would be quite fear-inducing internally, for sure. Yeah. I think you said it very beautifully. For any change, and this is your personal story, but for our listeners, any change, being guided by your innermost sensations and knowing. And we call it, Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of NVC, called it human needs. But there's something there about your values, the things that are really, really important to you, the things that you feel make you, your strengths. Lead with those, be willing to experiment as you did and explore the possibility of them being there in your life more. And that leads your path. I think creating a sense of a vision, literally an image of your future self with possibility to meet these needs and these values. Of course, you need to identify them first, but what's really so important to you and what makes you you? What are your strengths, and use those elements to build that new vision. I call it lead from the need because it's catchy, but it's basically that process of discovering what matters to you most and letting that guide you, not giving up on yourself that you can't meet those. I think, does that give you a sense for how to go about that? Because I think then you're more and more aligned with your values. You won't believe how many people I work with leaders a lot, people in that are leading change in some arena or supporting others. And I hear that so much. That's people's deepest longing, is to align their work with their values. It feels so awful to us to have that sense of incongruence between what we're doing and the people we are inside. I think it's crucial that we align it.
True. So true. I can relate with that a lot. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Thank you so much for that. Let's roll up our sleeves and let's get into something more practical. Okay, do you agree, Nati?
Let's do that. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so there is one area that when I look at lots of people that I know, and as a business coach, I look at that. It's one area that we resist like crazy. It's something especially sensitive solopreneurs. We resist that a lot with all of our strengths. But in reality, if you look at the 80-20 rule, like this is the activity that will give you better results for your efforts, will help you really create a sustainable business that's fulfilling and gives you a sense that you're really making a difference, it will be this. Let me share it with you. Selling. Okay. making offers,
Yes, of course, of
sharing our
course.
work, but not just creating content and putting it out there. No, making an offer, telling
Yeah.
somebody, oh, this is what I do. I have this program, or I have this
Yeah.
product, or this course,
Mhm.
or whatever. I do this number of sessions, whatever. And we just shy away from doing that because it's so
I know.
painful. Can you give us
Yeah.
some tools, tips, techniques that we can apply into that so we can change how we manage the sale process? We even
Yeah,
cringe at the word. So
of course. And I think a lot of people undervalue themselves. So I think very practically, there's the first thing is to really have your values clear. What is important to you and the purpose of why you're doing this work. Why? Because that's what tells you how you're serving people. And you can ask yourself, what if I didn't do this work? What if I didn't sell that course? What if I didn't do that coaching package? How would I be serving people, or would the world be a better place if I didn't do it? And I think that has given me sometimes the strength to face that difficult conversation, especially if you're going to have that sales call, or you're redoing your website or whatever. Connect with your purpose first and what it is you're bringing to the world, and why is it making the world a better place. I think that can give you enough impetus to do it. And if that's not enough, ask yourself, what if I didn't do it? Is it okay if I didn't do it? You know, for example, I'll give you an example. Lately, I've been trying to find or help people find me who are in the environmental industry or social change projects that contribute to environmental and climate change for the better. And my coach actually asked me, okay, Nati, forget about it. Just don't do it. Don't do it. I'm like, no, but then the world is gonna, no, we need climate change. So that, and my piece of contributing to that is really important to me. And I think it's important to the world. And that was enough for me to say, no, but I need to do it. I need to serve people in this way, to make that for my bigger purpose, which is making the world a better place, right? I also think that we need to support ourselves. So that inner self empathy, we call it, that ability to see yourself, what you were saying, notice your feelings, and change your inner critic to a compassionate voice, which is done with practice. And there's many things people can do, maybe a little bit outside of the time we have together, but that's so crucial, because that self-doubt will dissipate if you have self-empathy. If I can say to myself, wow, you're really scared to increase your prices for this training, but you need more money to sustain your family, don't you? Like literally talking to ourselves and seeing ourselves and the needs we're trying to meet by doing what we're doing can really, really help. It just supports us internally. And I think we also need external support, especially the more sensitive we are. We need those people out there cheering us on, not in a fake way, but really valuing what you do. I take every testimonial and I put it on a list. Why? It's not that I take them all, put them all out on my website, but it's important to me to know that this student of mine had this success because I helped them with this thing, and their relationship with their coworker changed, or their relationship with their mother, or they weren't talking to their brother and now they've made up. And I had a small piece. Of course, they did the work, but I helped them see the path to doing that. And I think that feeds me and increases my confidence. But we also need extra. So that's one way to get external support. Make sure it counts, right? Because we'll have self-doubt. So we need to counter that in a very factual way, I think is the best way. Also, to get support, to have accountability buddies, to get regular calls with someone, a friend or a co-worker. Usually solopreneurs work alone, right? But you still have colleagues of different sorts or partnerships. Get in touch with them very regularly, once a week minimum, with someone, to just talk about your difficulties and get that support, and talk about especially what you want to do, and see if they can hold you accountable in a gentle and supportive way. In neuroscience, we talk about the Ulysses Contract, which is that our brain seems to be wired for short-term benefit, and it's really difficult to change gears towards choosing for the longer term benefit. And some people are naturally better than others, but it takes effort. And sometimes that external support, making the conditions so that you're going to do that thing that is difficult, you're going to make that call, that is going to put you face to face with someone saying, that's too expensive for me. How could you even charge that? You're going to feel challenged. What are you going to do then? You know, get the external support that you can brainstorm, and you can then go back to that person and say, hey, I did do that call and this is what happened. And it can help a lot.
Yeah, it really makes
So those are a few tips.
Yeah. So let me do a quick recap. And if I forget any of those, just you remind me. So first would be know your values and make sure that what you're offering, what you're creating for others, it's really in alignment with your values and what you care and with your sense of purpose. Like, okay, this is something that it's really meaningful to me. So that's why I want to do it. And then ask yourself, what if I wasn't offering this? How would the world suffer? How would it be less good for others if I just refrained and I allowed my fear to stop me from offering this that I know can help others? How would they live their lives in a much better way if I just dared to do it? Or what's the cost of not doing it? And then you also said to have a friendlier conversations with ourselves. Like instead of that critical voice, say, okay, that critical voice is there, but there is some part of me that can talk to me as if I was a good friend and be nicer.
Or a puppy. Sometimes a kitty or a puppy, you know?
Yeah. And then you also mentioned having external support, somebody you can turn to and just open your heart and share your fears and ask for gentle support, because, well, gentle is what we need, sensitive solopreneurs, but we need to ask for that, even if we are a bit of shame, like, okay, I'm afraid of making that call and I don't want to share, but hey, I'll do this, I'll share it with you. And then you'll know that I'm here and I'm open and I will be able to support you in the future. So it's a give and take with people. And those are the 4 things I got.
Yeah, and I think one more that maybe I wasn't so clear about is to gather a list of all the ways in which your work is valuable to others. So those testimonials, make a list of them, because that list of facts add value. Real proof to yourself. When you have a doubtful moment, you can say, okay, but I helped this person, and just keep track of your successes. And let them come in, that is one of the things that changes neural structure, we think, is to give the positive moments of success a moment, like about 15 seconds, to let those positive emotions seep into you, those body sensations that are of satisfaction and joy. Let them be felt, because if you just pass right by them, they don't create neural structures readily, we think. They need a little bit of time for that to change your brain to a more positive.
And we don't typically do it. We tend to focus like, I post something on Instagram and everybody leaves nice comments, and there's this one, awful comment criticizing you, and we just focus on the negative. And I think it's also something connected to the brain, but we need to be more conscious of, okay, I'll just let it sink. All these positive comments, somebody loved what I created. Why not? Why we rush through those things and we just focus obsessively on the negative ones, right?
And that's where compassion, for me, knowing what happens in the brain gives me more compassion for me and others, for myself.
Makes you conscious.
We have a negativity bias. Our brain is wired that way to keep us alive. We all have heard about the negativity bias, I think. And it is such a real thing that, as you said, 100 positive comments will focus on the one negative. And it takes effort to counter that. And that's why letting those other ones seep in really seems to resource you internally to counter that negativity bias, which is there for a good reason, but often it's not adaptive to the actual situation when there's no tiger threatening us. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So lots of things to practice, and it takes time. So compassion towards ourselves and gentleness, but get started. It's the key to get started with one of those practices, and do it today with one thing. Stop being so critical with yourself, or something that resonates from everything that Nati shared here. Just choose one thing and do that. And at the end of the day, congratulate yourself for doing it. Even if it just was one tiny thing, but say, oh, let that feeling of gratitude for doing it, and just continue with that, and it'll keep growing and building up your internal resilience. That is what we need. Okay, Nati, thank you so much for that. So there is a question that I ask every guest that I interview, and it's this. Now, looking in hindsight to your life and to your business, with your current knowledge, what would you wish you had done differently or sooner in your business?
For me, you know, it's a recent thing in the last couple of years is getting a coach to handhold me and to keep me accountable and to keep me growing and to show me the way where maybe I didn't know certain skills. So I think continue to develop professionally and personally is really key. And having someone there hand-holding you is really crucial for me. It's made a huge difference in the money I make, in how I approach the world, in my experience of how I navigate change as well. And I think the second thing would be to get that accountability partner, that support, that person who is an empathic presence. They get to love you. You become such good friends, you know, and you're there for each other. That's really helped me a lot. Yeah. And I think if I could add a third thing, it would be to be connected daily with my purpose of why I'm doing this work. And even more than daily, before any call, before any training, before a coaching session, just connect with my purpose, because then I'm so present, you know, and I'm so authentic to the way I do my business and the way I serve others. That's really made a huge difference. Yeah. So
Wonderful,
create that vision.
wonderful. Oh, just my heart stands with all those things. So wonderful, Nati. Thank you so much. Okay,
Yeah.
so if anybody wants to know more or wants to go deeper into this with your help, or just know more from your website, you mentioned that you had something free that people could use to continue learning more about these things. So how can people get that and get in touch with you?
Of course. They can find me on my website, natibeltran.com.
I'll make sure that it's included in the show notes everywhere it's posted, this interview.
And I have created a little document for to help with 3 simple steps to help you practice some of these things, especially to be able to listen to any difficult message and transform it internally so that it doesn't need to leave a mark. You know, you can transform that into something positive for yourself so that you can create more and more resilience. And you can find it at resilient.natibeltran.com. And I'm hoping that it can really get you going along the path of the things that we're talking about today.
Oh, thank you so much, because it's really, really important to.
It's my pleasure.
Able to let those negative comments come to us, transform them, get the good aspect of them, because everything has a light and a dark side, but it's not just black and white. There's something good that can be obtained from it, as from the situation, the crisis and the chaos we mentioned at the beginning, and transform that like the lotus flower, right? From the mud, from the depths of the pond, grows something beautiful. So do that kind of transformation with potentially painful conversations, and turn them into something beautiful that helps you grow and make the world a better place. So thank you so much, Nati. It was so much pleasure talking to you as always. So one last question for you. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with? I have one that I want to share before you share yours. And you said at the beginning, it was right at the beginning, I got lots of things, but this really, really helps us be more at peace with what's going on. And you said, change is the nature of life. And it's true. If we stop resisting change and just accept it's there and it's going to continue, there is no so much inner struggle around it. And that was my take from your, just a brief and very short, but it really, it's important. So any final thoughts that you have, Nati?
Yeah, I think for me, if I could, and I get this from the work of Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication, it's the importance of needs, and I call it lead from the need. So learn to get in touch with your deepest longings, your deepest desires, and have those lead you into conversation, into your work, and connect with them often. You know, that those will create your vision. You want to contribute. In which way do you want to contribute? And just keep getting in touch with those needs internally and those values daily.
Perfect. Wonderful way to wrap up. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. If I want to share with our listeners, watchers, whatever, if they want to continue getting these kind of interviews, make sure you like, subscribe, or whatever you find this. Otherwise, the algorithms won't let you know. Or you can go and subscribe to my website. You will find the links around here in the video too. And again, thank you for watching. I really hope all these wonderful ideas that Nati shared with us help you feel more peaceful and thrive after life storms. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much, Nati. Till next time. Bye.